You probably had those moments where you're sitting down to learn a foreign language, whether it be a vocab book or you're reading a grammar book, and 5 minutes later you're on your phone or you turn on the TV and just kind of lose interest. And you're told by everybody that you should be reading certain things that interest you or following content that you really enjoy, and then you wonder why you're not able to do it, and then you think that the issue is you. When really the issue may just be your boredom. We get bored by things naturally. That's part of the human condition. And learning how to tap into your curiosity, learning how to tap into the things that arouse you, will be able to keep focused and continue to learn our second language. My name is Maxwell Myers. I'm a licensed therapist. In the past few years, I've been studying language learning, anxiety, the intersection between the two, and these videos are designed to provide you with that information, hopefully providing guidance so that you become a better language learner. So this problem really comes to head, and I talk about my own personal experience, when we're studying things that we're told we have to study. And this is especially the case if we're studying for a proficiency test, right? We're told that you have to reach this level of proficiency, ergo, these are the grammar points that are frequently on that test, these are the vocab things that are on that test, so you should learn them so that you can pass the test. And a lot of that stuff may not interest us, but we're told that we have to learn it, ergo, it feels like we're forced to do it, and it can be a drag and it can be boring. But there are strategies that we can do to help tap into that curiosity part and increase the level of good arousal so that we stay motivated and that it helps with the encoding process. Encoding obviously must happen in order to learn information, and encoding tends to be improved when that information has a personal connection to us. And you could think about it in a nutshell that there's two of those categories. One is when information is stress-induced, and one is when information is dopamine-induced, meaning it's something that we encounter as pleasureful. For example, if you're walking in a forest and you encounter a bear, that is stress-induced, and your focus goes to that bear because you want to know if that bear is going to be coming closer to you or if it's going to be backing away. And then likewise, if you walk into a buffet and you see a bunch of cake, it may start to salivate you and you may get some dopamine hits because you know that cake tastes good. So your focus may be constantly going to that cake. Arousal is essentially just a clinical term for your level of alertness. So if we want to tap into that positive side of alertness, the general advice, again, is to find topics that interest you. You may be given a list of 20 vocab that you have to learn for a proficiency test, but see if that vocab relates to a certain topic that you enjoy. For example, if it's cooking or if it's woodworking, you may be able to find something online, a video of a guy doing woodworking while speaking French that piques your interest a bit. The challenge is that boredom eventually will hit. Our arousal will eventually go down, or we may essentially get overwhelmed by the amount of information in front of us. So we learn, again, and I talk about this in my previous video, to tighten our focus in on just those one or two bits of information that our arousal is piqued by, that our curiosity is in. And we say, I'm just going to learn this one bit of information. And once we've completed that arousal hit, where does our focus then go? That is where we tap into curiosity. Curiosity is essentially that bridge between focus and arousal. If we lose arousal, our focus is going to be guided to whatever the next arousal thing is, whether it's stress-induced or whether it's dopamine-induced. But curiosity is essentially looking at the thing that you're interested in and seeing it as a puzzle that you want to solve. There's a guy named George Loewenstein who in 1994 created the information gap theory. And he argues that curiosity is created when there is a perceived gap between what we know and what we want to know. One of the things about the human condition is that we like to make meaning out of the chaos of life. So when we see something that could potentially be a pattern, our brain kind of lights up a bit and we're saying, oh, well, that's interesting. Additionally, if we see something that is different from a pattern that we previously know, that also creates some curiosity. And we're asking ourselves, that's interesting. Why is this pattern different, even though I assume it should be this one pattern? And this might also explain why comprehensible input theory may be really a positive study experience for us. Because if we know 95% of a sentence and there's only 5% that we don't know, we can use the part of the sentence that we do know to comprehend the meaning of that last bit of information, which creates understanding and creates order in that chaotic sentence. To further explain this point, there's a recent movement in language learning that's called content-based language teaching, which is essentially, if you're learning French, then you enroll in a Psychology 101 class that's taught in French. Not only are you getting a chance to practice your French, but you're tapping into an interest that you also get to learn some psychology with it. Now, a small caveat is that, according to the research, content-based language teaching is really effective if the student already has a very strong foundation in that target language. Meaning, if you were to just sign up for that Psychology 101 course that's taught in French with only a basic understanding, you're probably going to get lost because the language is so far advanced from what you already know. You have to remember, too, that content-based language teaching is essentially when it's done in more of a university setting or a classroom-specific setting where the syllabus is designed already and it goes along at a self-determined pace by the professor or the teacher. You really don't have as much support as you can if you were to study on your own. If you choose your own material, you get to study at your own pace. And if you really are tripped up by something, you get to look it up. So the framework that I tend to use is looking at what is necessary versus what is interesting to me. So I'm interested in cooking. I can go to my local Japanese market, buy some foods, and then look at the instructions on the back to help guide, certain terminology that may be interesting to me. But I can also take a look at what's necessary, meaning if I go to Japan next time, I can imagine what is the first thing that I'm going to encounter once I hit Japan. Honestly, it's probably the airport. So I can tap into the terminology of navigating an airport, whether it is customs, having customs check in a bag, having to declare certain things. That piques my interest because I know those may be necessary terms that I have to use. And likewise, too, if I'm interested in cooking and food, I can learn to navigate what it's like to order food at a restaurant and use that to pique my interest in vocabulary that I want to learn. So using the subject matter that really interests you, but also navigating the situations that you find are potentially going to be necessary for you if you were to use your target language, can be a real good guide in organizing your own syllabus, to put it in different terms. And finally, remember, you don't need to memorize everything you come across all in that instance. Just follow your interest, pick the one or two things that really pique your interest, and learn that in that moment. All the information that you didn't learn in that one sitting, if you continue to encounter this information or this content in the next few days, your interest may be piqued by that stuff, and you'll learn it in that moment. Hopefully you found this information helpful. Hopefully you found it interesting too. If you did, let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. Like or subscribe to this video. It obviously helps out the algorithm. And thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time.